Want to bring in now former press secretary under President Obama and now an MSNBC political analyst, Robert Gibbs. Robert, great to talk to you. The president really making a major pitch there, right? 3 weeks out from the midterms, as I mentioned, one of the top issues for Americans right now, the economy and specifically oil prices. The writing has been on the wall there, right? Essentially since this decision came out from Saudi Arabia along with OPEC Plus. And the president now saying, okay, here's what we're going to do about it. Let me first get your reaction to what we just heard from the White House.
Well, obviously, I think it's very smart policy to increase the amount of oil that's out there on the market. The increase in supply should, as the president talked about, drive down the cost of that oil and drive down the cost of refining it into gasoline. We know that it takes gasoline to move products from and through the supply chain. So every part of transportation is really vital to our economy. And driving down gas prices, whether it's for consumers or businesses as they move their products, should help alleviate the cost, the high cost of inflation.
What do you make of this incentive the president is essentially pitching to oil companies across this country, right? We see this country is moving towards clean energy, right? 15 to 20 years out, we've heard commitments, for instance, from the state of California, right? The writing is on the wall for these oil companies that the need is not necessarily going to be there as it is right now. So you got the president essentially saying, listen, let's increase domestic oil production, get on board with this plan, and we will buy it back if you're selling it to us at $70 a barrel.
Yeah, I think it's also a smart policy. I mean, look, we know what happens to the price of oil during recessions because the demand for it goes down, which means the price of a barrel of oil goes down.
Yeah.
If you're an oil company and you don't want to produce or drill for or capture that oil at that moment because, let's say, oil is $40 a barrel, then there's a disincentive for you to begin to do that. If the president and the administration describe a price floor that companies can get and are guaranteed to get, that should increase their incentive to not worry about the market going up and down, particularly if we were to find ourselves in a recession.
Tell me what's going on behind the scenes here, if you will, right? Because you then have the president saying to oil companies, pass on your profits to the consumer. We have heard this across the board for the last couple of months. You got customers paying $5 at times at the peak, right over the summer, a gallon of gas. But you have oil companies making record profits in lockstep with this, right? So behind the scenes, is the president having conversations with these oil companies to say, you got to do something? You cannot continue to profit this way while the American people continue to suffer. And what would incentivize them to get on board with this plan?
Well, I'd imagine whether it's the president, the vice president, or members of the cabinet that are having these discussions, I would absolutely believe that's the case. I mean, they've probably been having these discussions for a while, and I'm sure ramped those discussions up at the announcement of OPEC and OPEC Plus changing their output numbers. And so I think it's incredibly important that the president and his administration stay in touch with these business leaders. Look, everybody wins if the economy continues to grow,
sure, if
inflation comes down. And I think that's what the president and the administration are trying to guide these companies to be good actors in doing.
You know what the president did today, even in this pretty short speech, he kind of talked the American people through what has been done, what is actually happening, right? He even talked through some of the things that he feels as if are misnomers that are out there about the process of gas prices and oil prices. I'm wondering if you feel as if the administration is doing enough of that when it comes to inflation as well, right? We're continuing to see inflation go up over and over again, along with you got Fed Chair Jerome Powell increasing interest rates over and over again as well, and the market's just going crazy. Is the administration doing enough to explain to the American people that you kind of have to be patient with a process like this? We're not necessarily going to see results from essentially these rate hikes, right?
Right.
And lowering inflation in the immediate future.
Yeah, I think the administration is doing a good job at this. Look, it is hard to have a message of economic patience at a time in which prices are high. I do think, and it was important that you heard him say here, that he understands what's going on in the economy and he understands
Sure.
what the American people are going through. I think it's important that a leader that speaks about the economy speaks about it and lives in it in the world in which consumers are living in it. Look, he'd love to wave a magic wand and be rid of this. The challenge that we see is countries all over the world are dealing with this, right? We know what's happening in Great Britain. We know what's happening throughout Europe. We're seeing even higher inflation costs in those places because of supply chain constraints coming off of COVID. And then what's happened with Ukraine. I think it's imperative that he keeps pushing this. He keeps having this discussion. And look, as politicians are on the ballot in 3 weeks, they've got to have this discussion with voters, too.
So what else needs to be done, Robert, right? Because you're absolutely right. You see what's happening in the UK, specifically. Their energy prices are insane right now. Inflation is through the roof. They're having major uphill battles, especially when it comes to their leadership as well and what's happening there. But when you are an American at home and you're going to the grocery store, and I say this every day, and you're paying $200 for a family of four, you can't afford that every week, right? So what are they not doing? What should they be doing that you feel as if they are not doing?
Yeah, I don't know that there is a list of things. I doubt there's a list of things that they could be doing that they aren't in reality. I can't imagine that this isn't part of every day's worth of meetings at the White House, figuring out whether it's something that they can do through the Strategic Petroleum Reserve like they did today, or other things that help alleviate the costs of everyday products for everyday Americans. Again, it is one of those things, as I said, the economic message of patience is both a harder one to deliver and probably even a harder one to hear. But I think they're actively involved in this. Look, it's why, to your point, if you look at where we are versus Europe, we're paying higher prices, but less than they're paying. So, look, I think some of what we're doing is working even through really the impacts of a pandemic and really through the impacts of, somebody as crazy as Putin doing what he's done in Ukraine. I mean, we've talked about this for a while, right? We knew that this incursion into invasion into Ukraine was going to cause wheat prices to spike. What was that going to do to global prices for food? We knew what was going to happen, and we've talked about it for a while. This really is something that is having to be managed globally, and I think they're doing the best job they can.
Robert Gibbs, thanks for sticking with us through it all. Appreciate it. Great to talk to you, sir.